All right, kiddo, give me a hug. I love you.
Love you.
You'll have all kinds of fun with your grandpa while I'm gone.
A disaster in space. That's the way we wrap up a For All Mankind season. And to tackle one of those, you need a lot of highly competent people working together against the odds. Season 4 is a little more complicated because we have the real mission to bring the Goldilocks asteroid to Earth to change the planet forever. And then we have the covert mission to keep it in orbit around Mars because, well, Ed and Dev never want to leave there. It's funny because Ed has spent a good portion of the season being a douche, and Dev has pretty much always been one. But you still can't help rooting for them because stealing an asteroid is cool. I'll come back around to that because it's also very cool that we finally get Sergei's return, and he added a whole other element to things. What a great character to be able to pull out of your back pocket. The last time we saw him was in the season 3 finale when he picked up his newspaper on his front lawn as a newly minted American citizen. Earlier in that same episode, Margo coordinated with General Bradford to smuggle him and his family out of the Soviet Union in one of her final acts before defecting herself to evade prosecution for passing him classified plans. Saying she coordinated with Bradford is a bit too generous. She bamboozled him, as she did Sergei, who when he called from the airbase in Germany was excited that they could finally be together. Of course, the second deception was made out of love and to protect him, but because the JSC bombing happened, he was in the same boat as Aleda, thinking she'd been dead for the past 8 years. In that time, he moved on at least as far as building a new life in Iowa. He's married and teaches physics at the local high school. It's not as exciting as working at Roscosmos or NASA, but it is a major upgrade from the Gulag. And while they did do a pretty good job of making his new life look fulfilling, if not a little boring in the first few minutes of the episode, it only needs to exist to be something he would be giving up when he pulls up to that crossroads every day on his way to work. Because imagine his surprise as he's brushing his teeth and goes for a rinse and hears that voice on the television. There's no way he's not going to Houston, but it's still insanely satisfying when he takes that right turn. The swelling score worked so well that I immediately noticed it was quiet when she finally showed up in the parking lot of the diner, and knew then that it wasn't going to be a happy reunion. This is another one of those situations like Danny and Ed's fight and Margo's reunion with Aleda. It's been building for seasons. And it's not just about the feelings they had for each other. But don't get me wrong, all that chemistry tangled up with Margo's impenetrable workaholic nature didn't hurt. When Sergei drops everything to try to protect her, there's an earned sense of obligation because she literally gave up everything to save his life. This is one of the many things he reveals to Aleda that brings her around enough to help him set up a meet. Before she agrees to help, Aleda tells him that she understands on some level that her feelings towards Margo are irrational, but she just can't figure out how to forgive her. This seems normal enough given the circumstances, but it also cuts a little when you see her freezing out her mentor. Regardless, she passes off a secret equation that provides Margo with a time and a location. Throughout the episode, they made a point of showing how tight her security was, so I'm not entirely sure how she slipped it, but she did. The reunion gets dragged out to the last second, so he thinks she won't show. And then as mentioned, they have a quiet reunion with Margo maintaining a safe distance. She leads with a warning that this can't happen, thinking that he's there to rekindle their affair, but he quickly brushes that aside and insists that she's not safe. The woman she knows as Irina Morozova, the head of Roscosmos, was his handler with the KGB. For us, that's not a huge surprise, and I didn't think it would be for Margo either. Irina black-bagged her and drove her to the Star City reveal in the back of a truck with her face covered in blood, thinking she was going to her own execution. But when he continues saying that she was the one who sent him to the United States in the first place, and was the architect of the destruction of both of their lives, this is a divergence from how Irina described her working relationship with Sergei. So if this is not an entirely mind-blowing revelation, it does seem to make her reconsider her position. She's not safe, and he should know, and he tells her she can't go back. This is where it gets interesting because I don't think she really has many options here. I mean, she could just redefect if that's even the right way to say that, but after she went on TV and became an infamous traitor, you would think that she would have to go to prison. I'm curious to see because in the Cold War era, they likely would have been happy just to take her away from Roscosmos to hurt their space program. But that's not really the situation she finds herself in. These are smart people though. They can put together math equations that can get you to show up at a diner based on GPS coordinates, so let's hope they come up with something good. I don't know how realistic it is that she could run. There are other nations that might be interested in her knowledge, but otherwise, she doesn't have a lot of flexibility or freedom to put a serious escape into motion. Another person who seems to be up against a nearly impossible situation without much flexibility is Sam Massey. One area where this season has consistently delivered, other than getting a wide range of songs stuck in my head, Cat Power, DMX, and Graham Parsons is an impressive spread. But the other area where it's been delivering is the closing moments of each episode. And this one is right up there. Sam floating in 0G looking at the key to the whole steal this asteroid operation, and F me is right. No idea how she's gonna pull that off. But how do we get here? Because the best thing about a heist is the planning montages, right? Dev's proposition to steal Goldilocks sounded insane when he first brought it up, but the show did an amazing job of creating a situation that they might be able to pull off. The way they introduced and explained the plan to us came down through some great TV. By jumping between Margo, Dev, and Danny, all explaining different aspects of the competing plans, it doesn't get too bogged down in the details, but you do come away with an understanding of what has to happen. Ranger can only make small changes to Goldilocks' current path. It can move it towards Mars, and then once it gets there, it can fire up its engines again for 20 minutes exactly to slow it down the right amount so that the planet's gravity will do the work and bend the asteroid's trajectory towards Earth. Dev's plan is to extend the burn for an extra 5 minutes, which will push it to where it'll be captured by Mars' orbit and remain there. They have to rely on the more powerful computers on the ground to calculate the burn, which is where Dev's group can hijack the process. The plan is for NASA to uplink the data to OPSCOM at Happy Valley, who will then beam it securely to Ranger. There is a failsafe in place in the form of a discriminator box that will validate the signal. The Heist Squad can build their own OPSCOM, but they also have to get their own discriminator box and swap out the one on Ranger, which is what Sam was thinking about when she was floating there. There is a formula at play here. You need to assemble a crack team who all bring their unique skills to the table, and the M7 security crackdown helped Dev and Ed clear their biggest hurdle. Because even though he killed the strike, Dev's plan is more appealing to the core group of workers who didn't cross the line than the status quo. As Palmer shuts down the speakeasy and the new security measures are put into place, we see how the team comes together. Once they get Sam, the rest of her crew is quick to follow. And because redundancy is so crucial for NASA, everything they need is already on Phoenix. And Sam knows just the guy to go to help them get it down to Happy Valley. Miles is a little harder to get on board than I would have guessed. Now that he's got the black market on lock, he's become a lot more risk averse. It almost parrots the mentor he toppled when they come to him for help. Like Ilya, he's making bank and he just wants to cruise through the rest of his tour, but Dev swoops in and challenges him, asking if he wants to be a millionaire or a billionaire. Unsurprisingly, he's about getting that B almost as much as Margo is about that hamburger she eats in her hotel room. And he doesn't even have to scrape the lettuce and mayonnaise off to get down to business. It's no simple task though, and just to repeat what I already said, this is what makes a heist so much fun. The last piece of the puzzle is that it can't look too easy, so you have to have a snag come up. After working around security and establishing their shadow OPSCOMs, and after some crafty work moving things around, including Miles having a cold as ice moment when his package gets searched by the security workers, one piece gets put in the wrong box and ends up locked up where they can't get to it, and of course, it's the discriminator box. Before we got here, Miles provided a detailed explanation of why that was the worst thing that could happen. That was before he was on board though, and now that things are in motion, he tells them that there is a way into the room, but that it's an air vent that they're all too big to fit through. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet is that Ed has been so caught up with the asteroid job that he forgot he agreed to watch Alex for Kelly. She was leaving for Korolev Crater for 3 days to get her project underway and didn't even entertain taking her son with her when Ed tried to weasel out of babysitting. This mostly works as a way for Ed and his grandson to finally bond. But he also ends up being the only human on base small enough to fit through the air vent. I don't want to completely overlook the actual family moments these two had together because they did happen, but the way this was set up, you had a few seconds to think to yourself, would Ed really volunteer Alex for this before you knew it was going to happen? They set it up pretty well with Dev talking about his father sharing his passion with him, how that was one of his fondest memories. And you can see Ed and Dev both think about Alex in the exact same moment when Miles is talking. And I suspect that if Kelly doesn't kill them, this will be a fond memory that Alex holds on to about his grandfather for the rest of his life. It's so wrong, but he pulls it off and he seems to get a kick out of it. So chalk one up for sharing your passion. And with that, everything is in place to go get that $20 trillion asteroid. And I only mention Kelly briefly because she doesn't play a large role in the main story, but there is a fantastic sequence of her setting up her equipment at the crater and sort of generally soaking in the wonder of space that made me feel more certain than ever she'll discover something out there before the season ends. With 2 episodes to go, it feels like we're in the right place. I remember watching season 3 and thinking, how are they going to wrap all this up? Season 4 feels like it's on firmer footing. Things are going to go wrong, that's a given, but there are a lot of different ways that could happen, which is pretty exciting. I tend to think the heist will be successful, but struggle to envision what that would mean. It's harder to imagine if it would fail because then what would you do to Ed, Dev, and their team? As I was writing this, I was trying to jot down all the dangling threads that are out there to be pulled on. There are other ways you could have had Miles in the place he is without pushing someone like Ilya out. So could he still have a part to play? I know a lot of people thought he might be the KGB plant, which is another thing they mentioned and hasn't come into play yet. The CIA agent who was talking to Hobson mentioned that both sides have operators available, so I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up again. Also, there's North Korea, and Miles' promise to get Lee's wife up there. That seems like it'll have to happen, or Miles will have to answer for his inability to make it happen before all is said and done. And then the other thing they mentioned more than once in passing is unrest in Saudi Arabia, but I have no idea how that will affect the current mission. So there's a lot to consider while we wait for the next episode, so let me know what you think is going to happen in the comments. How is Sam going to switch out the discriminator? What is Margo going to do? Will Miles get his B? Will Kelly discover life on Mars? And if they do manage to steal the asteroid, how will the powers that be respond? And I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.